In this video, we're going to go over some eye-opening and brutal truths about Tinder and dating apps, and if they are actually still worthwhile today. But first, I noticed the top video for the truth about Tinder is actually a guy talking about Tinder to build fires, which I thought was kind of funny. But anyway, let's get into the app. So Stanford University sent out a survey, and they found that half of Tinder users were not interested in meeting somebody. Wow, like off the bat, there's a pretty sizable disadvantage right there. And then it mentioned how nearly 2/3 of users were already married or in a relationship. Like if you just install the app, odds are statistically you're going to fail. And as mentioned just below it, like it's practically social media for a lot of women. It's for attention, it's for fun, which is like, okay, that's fine, but like that's not the intent of the app. And if it was fun for guys, like that would be great, but it's really not. It's really just a grind. Now, there are two different aspects I want to mention about this survey. The first is actually that men were surveyed as well at the same time. And they are all, using the app to actually meet somebody. So if it was just women surveyed, there's a quite a strong likelihood that the percentage that are not interested in meeting somebody is going to be even higher. However, they never specified exactly what a Tinder user is in terms of activity, because Tinder actually starts to remove your profile from being seen after about, I believe, like a week. So there's a good chance it's actually not that bad. But either way, I mean, like 10 years ago with Plenty of Fish and all that, like nobody was really using it for attention. Well, not entirely, at least not to the level that it is right now. But let's crank up some of this depressing data. So some of these are kind of wild, but we'll start with a beefy report made by the Pew Research Center. And the first thing is that half of online daters said they've encountered somebody who misrepresented themselves on their profile. That's wild. So there's a lot of catfishing going on. I've never really been catfished, and I hope I've never catfished anybody. Next, 42% of women and 17% of men have felt uncomfortable or harassed on them. Yikes. There's the fact that a lot of guys get scammed. I have a buddy that ended up meeting or not meeting with somebody. He had set up a date, and she, which is probably a guy, I assume, said that he needs money for an Uber, and he sent it, and it wasn't like a lot of money, but like just another crappy thing about the apps. With all of this, it's not surprising that a study that measured the mental health of swipe-based dating app users found that they were significantly associated with psychological distress, and that users themselves reported higher levels of depression and anxiety. Wow, that's sad. It just shows how unnatural this all is, and we're not really kind of built for just this brutal rejection at a high level and just being so subjected and just measured, and it's just mass rejection, and you kind of have to become numb to it to some degree. Now, about swipe-based dating apps, I actually feel there's a lot of opportunity on Tinder still, despite everything that I just said. I do help guys make it work all the time. I'll get to that in a second, but I actually think eHarmony and Match are a bit underrated. Beyond a higher reported user satisfaction rate, eHarmony actually has more women on it than men. Yeah, Match.com is, I believe, a 50-50 split, and Tinder is like 75% guys. But I mean, the thing with eHarmony and Match, like, for one thing, it's a bit of an older crowd generally that gets attracted to it. I believe like the first sizable demographic age range is like late 20s. It's very relationship focused, which isn't necessarily bad. I know the people that generally have the most problem with Tinder is those who actually just want to find somebody that they can connect with. But going back to that, not the original report, but the Pew Research report, they were accounting for all apps, all online dating, to paint a bit of a picture, and not just Tinder. And they found that 77% of users have gone on a date through an app, which is, yeah, that's a little bit better than just the people from Tinder. 57% said that it was overall, using online dating was a positive experience. So, people are actually willing to still use them, not just for social media. And, I do think that's important to know, that Tinder is kind of just bringing the average down quite a bit. But overall, here's where I'm at. I do think Tinder is still a very good option to use, at least alongside 1 or 2 other apps. Like, yes, there is a small percentage of very good looking guys that can dominate on the apps, and that's your competition. However, they mainly go for the hookups. If they didn't, they wouldn't be on there very long. So having a relationship focused profile while not being like overly serious, where you would give the impression that you just seem like a guy that would move too fast, is really the best focus. And the main way to go about doing this is to just not have any like shirtless pictures in front of the mirror. And like maybe if you're at the beach or something, that's fine. Not being like overly cocky or arrogant or sexual or flirty, which some of you may be like, duh. But I know a lot of you fall into this trap because there's a lot of people that are actually reiterating this type of advice. And that's just not really going to work. You're not doing the best things possible to get like the most appeal to the most amount of women, essentially. And that's what you want to do. Like, there's a small percentage actually do want to hook up and stuff, but like they're getting also a lot of messages from other guys. So it's really going to be hard to compete at that angle unless you are like very good looking. But there was an AMA on Reddit, and a Bumble employee spoke of the metadata that they had in terms of like messages sent. And he said something like 91% of messages were just one word, like, hey. And that 85% of conversations were just one exchange long. So despite the competition at times seeming quite intimidating, they're more or less incompetent because you are just dealing with the average person, the average guy, and they don't really put that much effort into it. So if you skim through their profile, look for something to bring up, be quick about it, because overwhelmingly, most things don't go anywhere. You don't want to invest that much time. Same thing for like conversations. You don't want to be talking for days and then find out that, oh, they actually just use it for social media. But scan their profile, something to bring up. Maybe they went to a trip somewhere. You can tell from their picture. Or anyway, I have a video I'm going to link at the end of this video about Tinder bios if you are curious to go a little bit deeper into that. But these 2 things, the relationship focused profile and also just messaging much better, including like the actual conversations should be like normal conversations, no different than how you would talk to anybody else. Those 2 things will give you like a decent edge over the competition. But before I go, there were a few other interesting things I found after skimming through all this data. It's expected that by 2040, that 70% of relationships will begin online, which is crazy because like back in the day when I started like Plenty of Fish, and Plenty of Fish was always like, you're using Plenty of Fish. Like it never started with like a very nice reputation. But anyways, back then it was like kind of sketchy to use. And now it's like, it's the default way. And that's only like 12 years ago. It's not like that long ago. I'm not that old. And secondly, this study was actually from Tinder, and they said that 65% of women using their app said that they believe men are only looking for casual flings. And that's crazy because I know you guys, like most guys aren't actually doing that. And this was actually confirmed because the men who reported on the survey said that only 29% were actually after that. And here's the last thing, which I'm actually calling bullshit on, and it's from Tinder as well. And it says that men get caught up in judgment stereotypes and how physical traits like height and other things like job titles are not make or break factors. Like, come on. Women weren't at least very truthful in that survey. And something else I found, and this was actually from that same Reddit thread I talked about earlier about the Bumble employee. And it was somebody that worked for Match.com. And apparently they determined through tracking certain keywords and data and charts and whatever, that on average, it takes 3 dates before a hookup. I've always kind of advocated for that for a lot of guys. Like, it's a pretty good standard to go by, especially if it's like a relationship type potential arrangement, that it's not like an obvious hookup. That, stick with that. That's a pretty solid rule, and I'm not at all surprised if that's accurate. But overall, just recognizing the reality of these apps is essential. And that's kind of the message that I want to give with this video. If you're a young guy, if you're in like early 20s, maybe even a teenager, like, you could download these apps, get kind of excited, put together what you think is a good bio. You put some what you think are good pictures. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. And you expose yourself out there, which is like very, very vulnerable thing to do. And you essentially just get a big middle finger to your face and say, nope, you are not good enough. Here's a lot of rejection and getting turned down. And if you are not ready for that, that can very much sting and that can very much hurt. And it's very easy to believe that there is something wrong with you because you are getting a very negative result over something that you thought that you were at least a lot more optimistic for. And it's, you know, there isn't something wrong with you. This is how the apps are built. It is very discouraging, but if you are able to use them, if you are able to kind of have some patience, have great apps, or app pictures, which are very, very important. Like, I don't know, 90, 95, maybe even 100% of your, like the metric of success. But it's just that fact that a bad bio, you know, a bad opener, bad conversation, not knowing to, you know, don't like message for days and days and days because most still won't actually meet up with you. There's some other things that can obviously impact your results. But anyway, I will link that Tinder bio video over here. And surprisingly, there was a very good GQ article, which is probably the first and last time I will link to GQ in my description, but I will include it, that talks about your bio. But anyways, I will talk to you guys again soon. Peace.